Hello, this is Brian Rowe for NIIP Episode 7, where we're going to talk about Viacom v. YouTube, one of the biggest copyright infringement cases currently pending before any court. A huge decision came out recently where the judge basically threw most of the case out on summary judgment. Now let's take a step back and talk about what that means. First, a little bit of background about the case. Viacom is a content industry company that basically owns a lot of different TV shows and other programs that were being uploaded directly to YouTube by end users. Instead of suing end users for this copyright infringement, Viacom decided, well, YouTube, now owned by Google, has really deep pockets, so let's go after them on some theory of secondary liability. YouTube has a policy in place backed up by the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is that if they get takedowns over infringing content, they will remove that content, and that qualifies them for a safe harbor. Let's take a moment to talk about what a safe harbor is. A safe harbor is basically a carve-out, a small section of the law that says if you follow certain steps and you're a qualified entity or individual, you cannot be sued over a particular topic. So in this case, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, Section 512, covers a copyright safe harbor. So if YouTube follows the steps there, including good faith and following best practices in the industry, they qualify for this safe harbor and can't be sued over copyright materials, over copyright infringement. This is an extremely important point. The reason is that without the Digital Millennium Copyright Act safe harbor provision, we would not have user-generated content sites. Users can easily add content to any website, and the penalties for that content, if it's infringing in any way, can be up to $150,000 per piece of infringing content. Any user-generated site would have to spend twice as much money on lawyers just to defend them from copyright infringement suits without this type of a safe harbor. Now, the safe harbor suit is also really important for second comers or people who are going to be dealing with this type of situation later. Viacom actually said, oh, we don't care about what YouTube is doing currently. They put a bunch of fingerprinting software in place and they pull down our content automatically now. We just don't like everything before 2008. And they actually said the amount of infringement before 2008 should give them infinite damages, an unlimited amount of damages. The judge said, no. You got to come up with an actual number. So they come up with a huge multi-billion-dollar number. But this could have severely impacted Google's financial standing, and the ability for anybody else to create a competitor with Google. Now, the court basically on summary judgment said, look at the facts, Google's got a bunch of best practices in place, they have followed the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, therefore they are available to get this safe harbor, and we throw out the copyright claims. This isn't that surprising of an outcome. There have been several cases that were very similar. Viejo, V-E-O-H, had several lawsuits that were similar to this in the preceding years. And Google has really followed a lot of the best practices that were outlined in those lawsuits. One interesting little fact that's one of my favorites, though, out of this one is that the marketing half of Viacom was found out during discovery to have been putting videos up on YouTube that then lawyers were taking down. And this is just ridiculous. Huge companies can often end up with these conflicts, but if it's a valuable service for free advertising, let's get the lawyers out of this altogether. Why this ruling is so important, though, is it allows for three things. Number one, it allows for innovation. Anybody else can follow YouTube's best practices and create a competing site following that model. If YouTube had lost, they probably wouldn't have been thrown out of the market. They've got a lot of money, they could have paid it off and continued to go on. But this allows small individuals to compete, or individual companies to compete, which is the second thing, competition. Without this, YouTube could have easily seen a monopoly because nobody else could deal with the type of damages that we're looking at in this suit, even though there are a lot of individual sites that are attempting to do the same thing YouTube does. Finally, this is extremely important for user-generated content and free speech. Well, why do I say free speech? The content that we're looking at here, put up on YouTube, just like this video, is basic free speech for you and I. It's where we do remixing, reuse of culture, creating commentary on things, political speech. Without this type of robust protection for internet service providers or user-generated content sites, we would not see our speech making it up. Anytime there was a question mark over whether an image used might be some way copyrighted, we would see it pulled down. Last thing I want people to remember is that this is a US-only case. We could see a very similar case somewhere else where YouTube loses. The safe harbors in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and in the Communication Decency Act, Section 230, are US-specific. We saw a few months ago a case in Italy where Google lost a criminal case because a video was put up by a user and then taken down as soon as YouTube found out about it. But since the video was put up, the administrative executive staff of Google, the owner of YouTube, were held responsible for the content that was there. And this type of safe harbor really allows these sites to move forward. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Google push politically for similar safe harbors to the DMCA and Communication Decency Act, Section 230 in the EU. Thank you. This has been Brian Rowe for New in IP, Episode 7. Remember, use your fair use rights, or we all lose our free speech rights.